minutes. Warnock of Georgia is recognized.
Thank you so very much, Chair Brown. It's been 14 years since the passage of the Affordable Care Act, yet 10 states, including Georgia, have not fully expanded Medicaid. Let me be clear, closing the health care gap is the right thing to do, but it's also the smart thing to do. It's good for our economy. In fact, a recent report from the Council of Economic Advisors concluded that Medicaid expansion increases the disposable income of those gaining health coverage. And for those who are listening and watching, I want to be clear that when we say expansion, we're not talking about a new program. We're not talking about spending additional dollars. We're talking about the fact that citizens in states like Georgia don't have access, that they're subsidizing health care in other states while their hospitals are closing. But the Council of Economic Advisors pulls into sharp focus the importance of this, the ways in which we can allow hardworking families to spend less on health care and more on essentials like food, diapers, and school supplies. Secretary Yellen, thank you so much for being here. Can you discuss how state economies have improved post-expansion, specifically compared to non-expansion states like Georgia?
You're talking about in terms of uninsured, individuals?
Yeah, how the states that have expanded Medicaid, how that expansion has improved the economies of those states juxtaposed with states that are non-expansion states.
I honestly can't give you numerical assessments of that. I haven't done that, but generally states that have expanded Medicaid have done better, and certainly the households in those states, and especially lower income households, have been relieved of burdens that allow them to spend more to support themselves and the economies of those states.
Here's what we do know about closing Medicaid coverage gap in Georgia. If we were to close that Medicaid coverage gap in Georgia, it would mean $1.2 billion in additional federal support that I secured through the American Rescue Plan Act. That money sitting on the table, 600,000 Georgians in the Medicaid gap. It would mean 56,000 new jobs every year, with 12,000 of those in rural communities. And it would mean $6.5 billion per year generated in economic output. And so I'm hopeful, I remain hopeful that Georgia lawmakers will do the right thing for Georgians and close the health care coverage gap. I want to move on to another topic. The child tax credit and the earned income tax credit, which I helped pass through the American Rescue Plan, was transformational for millions of Americans, reducing the number of kids living in poverty by more than 40%. All in all, these provisions collectively lifted nearly 10 million children above the poverty line or just slightly below the poverty line. These funds help Georgians buy essentials like food, diapers, a coat for their kid, life-saving prescription drugs. But unfortunately, these provisions expired and we lost the dramatic gains we made in combating childhood poverty. The 2023 FSOC annual report noted that while consumer financial health remains positive, we are seeing recent indicators of falling savings and rising credit card and auto loan delinquencies. Secretary Yellen, the child tax credit was a tax cut that put money in families' pockets. What economic benefits do we see from policies like this that focused on reducing childhood poverty, including on families' ability to save?
Well, I think it had an utterly dramatic effect on households. And as you mentioned, it resulted in a massive reduction in child poverty. It fell in 2021 to, I believe, 5.2%, which is the lowest on record. And of course, it means that families had, many still struggling because of the pandemic, had the resources to support their children. make sure that they weren't deprived of the food and other support that they need to go on to lead good lives and be productive members of the workforce as they get older. And, you know, many of these payments went to families that were in dire need. It's a tremendously important support.
Well, thank you so much. I'm very much in favor of tax cuts for working families. And this is why we've got to restore the child tax credit. And this is why the enhanced child tax credit found within the Bipartisan Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act is an important first step. And I hope we can get that legislation passed soon. Thank you so much for your
Thank you, Senator.
Thanks, Senator Warnock, and thank you for soon after you came here in 2001, we passed the most important attack on child poverty in decades, and thank you for your leadership role in it. Secretary Yellen, thank you. I know that this committee hearing and the preparation time for a hearing like this takes a huge chunk out of maybe the most complicated job in the federal government, certainly one of the most complicated. Every week, it seems, we learn about another responsibility that the Treasury Department has. So thank you, and thank you in light of what Senator Warnock said. I remember, and I still talk about the call I had with you after the President signed the American Recovery Act, and we passed it on March 6th. He signed it within a couple of weeks. Our conversation, you immediately brought in Commissioner Reddick, who was a Trump appointee, but who was reasonable and professional, and we got that moving. And by July, checks went out to the families of 60 million children, 2 million of them in my state. It changed the lives of so many, and it would change the lives dramatically if we could renew it as we're trying to do in a tax bill now. But thank you. For senators who wish to submit questions, those questions are due 1 week from today, the 15th of February. Then you will have 45 days, you and your staff, to respond to any questions. Thank you so much for your public service.